this is Michael Trefel and Beck from the Trefel Group.
Hi.
And on today's show, we're going to discuss co-ops and condos.
Right.
I think that question comes in a lot. The area where we work in northern New Jersey and New York City still has a lot of co-op buildings.
Absolutely,
and people ask all the time, what's the difference? Why one versus the other? So we wanted to have that discussion to give you guys an idea of an understanding what the difference is between a co-op and a condo, how to look at them, how to think about them, and then have a longer conversation with us when you want to purchase one or the other. So, Beck, tell me about co-ops.
Well, the biggest difference are co-ops. You're buying shares of a corporation.
Right.
So a corporation owns your building, and you're buying shares that correspond to your square footage of what you're buying, be it a one-bedroom, two-bedroom, what have you. Then everybody owns a piece of those shares. You're really part of a corporation. You still have the same board that maybe a condo would have. Similar,
okay.
you have your president, you have your treasurers who oversee everything. You still want to make sure that you have good money in reserves for upkeeps and new windows,
right.
and what have you, elevator repairs.
Right, which is similar to what a condo board
Very
would
similar.
be. But what are some of the advantages, for example, of a co-op where you don't see it anywhere else? I mean, it really is a unique animal. It's not everywhere around the country. I think it's a lot of the East Coast where we are.
I would agree with that. Yes. Well, co-ops are good in the sense that your initial purchase price tends to be lower.
Right.
For me,
we've seen some of them. They're in the 60s and 70s
absolutely.
for one or two bedrooms sometimes.
However,
right.
To go on the other side of that, when you buy something in the 60s or 80s, your maintenance fee is normally very high.
What does that maintenance include?
So
our viewers can
sure.
see
The maintenance fee will include your taxes. Where unlike a condo, you have to pay your maintenance and taxes. So we're going to include the taxes, which can be 40 to 60% as a general rule. I would say 50 tends to be an average. And it will include normally everything else. It'll include your water, your hot water. Sometimes it includes your electricity. Rarely includes your TV, things like that. Your Wi-Fi, ground maintenance.
Okay. What else? Some of the buildings that are in our area here, New York City might be a little bit different because they don't have a lot of land. Some of the co-ops here in northern New Jersey, Fort Lee, North Bergen, you might have pool or multiple pools, a gym,
absolutely.
grounds.
Now some of them charge extra
such.
for gyms, which we got to work out. So.
Right. If you want to do it, you do it. But a lot of the times, that's what part of the maintenance is. Now,
correct.
There's always risk and reward when you're going into a building per se versus a single family house. You have the maintenance, you have the whole staff on site, whether you're in the condo or in the co-op. You're going to have a super if something breaks and you need a little bit of help and support. There's doorman, sometimes concierge, you can help with packages. Some of the buildings have valet. I mean, they get pretty extensive and luxurious. But the question comes up is, well, why should I be looking at co-ops or not looking at co-ops?
Yeah,
is there the same liquidity?
They're so similar, but yet they're so different. It's amazing. So when we're talking more with co-ops, you really need to have a higher income to debt ratio.
Right.
So if you 3 to 1, 4 to 1 can be upwards depending on the building. So even though your purchase price is lower and maybe you don't have a lot to buy the co-op with, you still need to make 3 times your income to your debt. So your income from what you're working on, you still have your car payments and your insurances and et cetera, et cetera. All those add up to your expenses compared to your income.
Right.
And the board watches that very carefully.
Right, and that needs to be calculated. What you need to understand when you're looking at a co-op is that it's not as simple as just going in, taking a mortgage, buying a unit.
Correct.
The board is there, and while there is a safety net that a good board will create, because they do monitor the risk. The risk, really, the 3 to 1 ratio, understanding that if you have a 3 to 1 or 4 to 1 ratio of debt to income, the chances of a person foreclosing, defaulting, right, is much lower. So we rarely see a default or foreclosure in a co-op building.
The same basic reasons, yes.
However, I think the flip side, what a lot of my condo purchasers look at, is that the liquidity isn't as strong, let's say, let's use the politically correct term, I guess, as strong in a co-op building, because you have to qualify through this board. And and some of the boards, let's be honest, some of the boards are full of people who are very, very power hungry and are really asses. And you just have to sit there for an hour and listen to them lecturing and going through your personal detail. Look, even Mick Jagger couldn't get into a city.
Exactly.
You know, one of the co-ops in the city because people didn't want him partying all night.
Right. Would you want to live next to him at 3 a.m. if he's
I'm
coming
invited, I wouldn't mind.
Right. If you had Mick Jagger in your building, you want to go to the parties.
Yes, exactly.
Sure.
But that's the thing, you know, when you're looking at a co-op, it has an insulated sort of environment around it where everybody went through the same board approval process
correct.
interview process,
Right.
Background checks, financial checks, and everything else, and it creates a safety net. However, they don't sell as quickly as condos.
That is the big.
When they go back on the market, they tend to sit a little bit longer. And depending on the building, some buildings that have not managed their finances correctly
Huge.
can sit much, much longer than anything else. And really, that's where homework comes in. You want to know the finances of the building, especially if you're buying shares. You're buying into a corporation. You know, when you're buying stocks, let's say you're buying in the Dow 30, right, on the stock market, there is an inherent safety net of the Dow 30 versus emerging market funds, NASDAQ, and other things. And the buildings are similar, right?
Buildings are similar.
You want to be in a building, if you're looking at a co-op especially, you want to be in a building that has strong reserves, maintain it really well,
Exactly.
haven't had assessments that much in the last 10 years
units,
or so.
right? How many units maybe are rented compared to lived in full time?
Right, and that's the other thing you brought on.
Yes.
Most of the co-op buildings around here don't allow pets, and
A lot don't,
they're
for
much
sure.
stricter on the rental
They
aspect
are.
of the building.
Yes.
So if you buy
Because of the mortgage process of the
Correct.
banks, and
And
it
even-
will give loans to the co-ops
Right.
if there are too many rentals.
Right, and the other thing on that is some of the times they limit the rentals, right? You can only rent for 2 years, for example, or 3
Or you have to live
years.
there for a year or two before you can rent,
Right,
which
most
is a
of them
huge.
do. Most of them do. So
That's a-
it doesn't work for flippers, you know, if you want to flip the units back and forth.
Correct.
And you know, so that creates, again, both a safety net and the risk to liquidity. So that's what you want to look for. In a condo, you're buying real equity, you own what's inside those four walls, you still have the luxury of the amenities of the building.
Right.
Your entrance point might be a little higher, but you're paying that onto a mortgage versus paying that onto the building equity. So, you know, that mortgage, once you pay it off, you have that equity in your unit versus buying that into the shares of the corporation and you know, and paying maintenance to them.
So it's interesting. You're talking about the equity that you're paying. So you get a mortgage.
Right.
And you're paying off the mortgage.
Right.
So as you pay down the mortgage, you have little,
build up your
you
equity.
really have money equity
Correct.
in the co-op. Whereas the co-op,
In the
the
condo.
condo, sorry,
In the
in the
condo.
co-op, it's not quite the same.
Right, because you're paying the building, right? Your monthly fee is a total amount of money that you're spending a month. Majority of that will go to the building versus to pay down your mortgage. And that is a huge distinction. And I think that if you're looking at something really long term and you really love the building, I mean, we have some significant buildings around here. You look at things at the Plaza, for example, in Fort Lee. Some of those units are stunning with
Right.
views,
Views
you know, to New York City, the water and everything else. But you might be paying $3,000-4,000 in your maintenance, and that's something you need to watch out for when you're coming in. In the condo, it tends to be less, but your entrance point is higher. Do the homework, understand the differences, talk to us. We're happy to distinguish both.
Talk you through both of them.
Yeah.
Talk you down.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, there's advantages and disadvantages, I think,
There are.
depending on what your views are. Do you want to be there short term? Do you want to have the safety net of the board? Or do you want to have the safety net that in 2-3 years when job market changes or you have to relocate, you're just going to rent it out, which you can't do for the most part in a co-op. So that
The
might
co-op
push you-
boards even say that you're selling it too low. They may not even let you sell it if it's too low.
Right, they
Because
control
want
a
to keep
lot.
their prices as high as they can. So
Right.
that's another controlling issue of a co-op,
And
which can be good, can be bad.
And I think the control issue comes in a lot in the co-op. When you're dealing with a co-op,
More control, for better, for worse.
correct.
I mean, there is some advantage.
But you have to let go of some of the privacy, and
Right.
you have to let go of, I think, some of the inhibitions where you're going to talk to somebody and they're going to interview you pretty extensively to make sure that you are a fit into that building and will benefit the building versus create risk.
Absolutely.
And I think that's what they do, and you know, that's where control comes in. And that's some of the differences that you'll face when you're looking at the high-rise market in northern New Jersey co-op, condo, either way, we'll help you find one.
Give us a call. We'll tell you all about it.
Till next time.
Thank you.